Is it done? Hello, Rajesh garu?
Start.
Yeah. Yeah, hi viewers. Welcome to the weekly series of Talk the Book. I think this is 186th episode that we are doing at Apshay. So every week we do the review of a good book. It can one week is of Telugu and one week is of English. So today we have our reviewer Dr. Jyothsna. She is an English professor at ASRD College, University of Delhi. And so she has done PhD in English and foreign languages from University of Hyderabad. And I think she's reviewing the book as the stoned song. Just I'm very interested to know about it more. Yeah. So over to you, Jyotsna. Like you can start reviewing the book. You have 1 hour of time. So our viewers are there on YouTube Live, so they will be viewing it either now live or they can even view it even later. Right.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'll be reviewing Stone Song. I'm much glad to review this Stone Song, which is written by Mopur Penchal Narsimham, which was originally written as Ratipata, and I had the privilege of translating it into English as Stone Song. He has written several books in Telugu. He has received many awards as well. He has received Kavita Pravina Award, and he was also given so much of respect among the Telugu writing community. And we can find that like one of the rarest distinctions he has got, Sahiti Karadipika, was the title given to him. Several
Jyotsna,
short
sorry to
story.
interrupt. Like, don't mind like if you can switch on the video because our viewers will
Oh,
be
video
viewing it
is
on.
not visible.
No, video
Oh,
is not visible.
but I have switched on the video.
Okay.
Uh,
Rajesh, I
uh,
think
am I visible now?
Rajesh, hello. Not yet to me. Okay, you can start continuing it. We'll check from backend. Is there any issues?
Okay, when if I'm not visible, then please let me know. I will
Yeah,
try to
definitely, definitely. Yes.
adjust the light or some kind of thing.
Yeah. No, I think your video button is off, I guess. It's not even visible anything. Like it's actually video is off. Yeah, Jyotsna, you can continue, Jyotsna. We'll check the problem.
Okay. You also, it says Karthik video off. So I think probably it will show like that or
You can see my video, right?
okay. So we can find that he has written several books, several works he has written, and he was given the rare distinctions as well. Many awards he has received. Then we can see that like he has come up with these collections and novels also he has written. He's one of the prominent writers, we can say, because he has also conquered. He was able to manage his disability as well. At the age of 24, he has lost his vision completely. Then he had a kind of exile kind of life, we can say. Then later he started gaining more interest in literature, and he keeps writing in his books that it is only literature which has kept him feel alive, or he started getting more interest on life. So as we can find, literature, it enables anyone to have good view regarding life, how literature can make one to know about many things. We can find that it has proven in his life as well. Then he has started writing many novels, storybooks, which centered around the theme of disability, feminism, like women empowerment. Then he has written about several images as well, mostly the imagery of birds, the imagery of music, silence. So these are the constant images in his works. Then we can come to this particular collection, Stone Song. So he proposed that I could translate it if after reading some of his works. Then I have read some of his works, and then I thought that they can please the English readership as well. So I have translated these works. So the title poem, Stone Song, originally, it was Ratipata, and it has received Ranjini Kundurti National Poetry Prize. So, in this poem, we can find Stone Song. He brings out this image of forgetting, remembering and forgetting. The juxtaposition of remembering and forgetting we can find in this poem. And he also says that the stone is ready to speak. Are we having the ears to listen to it? So it is a typical sharp question for the readers who are reading this poem. And he also says like the stone is doing the penance. It is similar to anything which does penance, and it is being the witness of history. So in that way we can find the poem continues, and it ends with this kind of question that do you have the ears to listen to it? Then in this collection we have other poem as well. It is called Dying Again. It was like a Punarmaranam in Telugu, and it is Dying Again, which we can find as the poem. In this poem, he says that the leaves are withered, and the waiting corpse of the mother waits for the corpse of the mother waits for the arrival of the son. So we can find that the mother, even though she is dead, she has this kind of feeling that she wants to see her son. So mother's love, how we can find that it is like we can just find that many poets happen to sing of mother's love. So he is also one of such poets who speaks about mother's love. So the corpse of the mother, it happens to wait for the arrival of the son, her son. Then the grown up son, he comes and he sees, he doesn't really look at the corpse, look at the body of the dead mother. And he writes very well where he says he didn't shout his mother's name till his throat is dry. So that parched throat, we can find that because of the absence of the loved one, anyone would have the parched throat. So he writes how the son is divided of the kind of love, the attention, or we can just say that like he doesn't even recall her name. He doesn't even pay a glance at the corpse. Then we just find that he doesn't even walk carrying the mother's corpse on his shoulder. So he writes that the one who has carried this boy for 9 months in her womb, he didn't even carry her only for the 9 feet, or we can just say that like smaller territorial scape. He doesn't carry her. Someone lights the fire. So that's how like her funeral pyre is set out. So it is a kind of highly emotionally evoking kind of a poem where the mother's longing and the child not giving the expected kind of love is not shown. So one of the it has appeared in this magazine as well, Different Truths, this particular poem, Dying Again, which is highly emotional and very much uh, pain. So we can say that this poem tries to capture the pain with its intense form. So this collection can be read by people. We can say that like whenever if anyone is interested, they can read this collection, they will find very good poems. The very first poem is Language of Nature, in which he says like how the language happens to be natural. We can find that all the natural elements, they happen to contain the element of speaking. Then he also writes of the songs, for example, the kind of music that we can hear in the ocean, the kind of music that we can hear uh, in the river. In that, he is particularly he uses this phrase like the folk songs of the waterfalls. Why this image happens to be much distinct? Because the folk songs happen to be used, or we can say folk songs won't be compared by many of the poets, but he attributes this waterfall, which is also spontaneous, and folk songs which happen to be spontaneous. With that, we can find this kind of image. It fits very well because of this spontaneous nature. And waterfall, we can just find that it will have a rhythm, it will be pleasing to the ears without thinking much. So folk songs, we can find that they won't strain the listener. The listener will be easily the listener will be uh, uh, much the listener will be put at ease when the listener can listen to it. As we can find, for example, Ode to the Nightingale, where John Keats says that when he records the song of the nightingale, he says that you sing with full throated ease, summer's full throat and ease. So singing with the full throat, it can happen with a folk style of singing. So it suggests not having any constraints. So the folk music, it doesn't have the constraints. Also the folk, it has similar to what Wordsworth says, like the poetry is spontaneous and it is filled with the overflow of emotions. The folk literature, the folk songs, we can find that they are filled with the overflow of emotions and they are very much spontaneous as well. So that kind of comparison he makes in this poem, which is found in this collection, Stoned Song. Even the title of the poem is the title of the collection itself. We can say that Stoned Song, where we can find the alliteration, and it is very much alliterating. And this title also, it evokes a sense of connection to nature. Also stone, what we consider it as something which is very much concrete, and song which is very much momentary. So something concrete and something momentary, they happen to be together with this title. So that's why when he compares the waterfall to the folk songs, we can find that this image is very much striking. Then we also have another poem in this collection, Stoned Song, The Wounded Alphabet. In Telugu, it was Gayapadda Aksharam, and I have translated it as The Wounded Alphabet. Then we just find that like how he tries to express his views on different elements. Then he also says like the journalist uh, who works in the newspaper, or we can find that the journalist, we can find that they are found or we can just say that like the kind of life that they have, the kind of difference we can find between a politician and a journalist. Like the journalist, a true journalist is never neutral, will have a kind, will hold a view, will hold a view regarding the opposing something or favoring something. The journalist is not a politician. A kind of division that we can find between the politician and the journalist is always a true journalist. We can say a true journalist will always be uh, uh, divided of the kind of uh, neutral kind of views. So whatever it is, the journalist should be able to communicate. So that's why he says that the journalist, nothing can wound the weapon of the journalist, and the weapon of the journalist is the alphabet itself. So only through writing the journalist can communicate. And he is a poet. He didn't work as a journalist, or but he responds to the societal pressure that we put on the journalists sometimes, like how the journalists are told to change what they have written, or how we are having the freedom of speech is being curtailed. So this kind of idea he takes up, and he that in this collection we can find the diversity of poems. Several poems we have, and they explore on the rich diversity of things. So we can also find that he writes about, or we can just find that he writes about the several other natural elements. Then he says that the moonlight happens to be singing of the delight of the, or we can just find the love song of the moonlight. So in that way, in this collection we can find that he explores on the aspect of love. Then we can find that in his other collection, Crimson Lamp, which I have translated, which was earlier to this collection. In that collection, as well, we can find that he uses several poetic ideas. So in this poetry collection, Crimson Lamp, he tries to, in this collection, he tries to talk of the how the women, how they happen to be victimized, how the women were to sell their feminine flesh for money, or how they happen to be consumed by the fire of the society. So we can find that he takes a very much kind of a different approach towards the lives of the prostitutes. And he says that how these women happen to be forced by the society, and how they happen to be not having the life like everyone else. Then he also happen in this collection, he tries to talk of the girls, especially in the area of the old basti, or we can say, in my collection also I have used Path Basti itself. The name, the word I haven't changed. So there, how the girls happen to be married off without having much experience on life at the young age, and how they happen to leave the country, and how they were to have so tragic fate. So this kind of feminist kind of sensibility we can find in this collection. So we can say that as a poet, how he responds, and often we can find that we have this kind of statement that poetry never sells. Poetry doesn't have the readership. So these are the things, these are the negations that most poets uh, have to face. And often it is viewed that other poets read the poems which are written by the poet. So only another poet will be reading and appreciating. And poetry is complex. It can't be understood easily. These are the uh, preconceived ideas that people have, but poetry contains a story within it. So the story is very much inbuilt, it is very much installated in the poem itself. We can find that in this collection, Mr. Narsimham, he tries to use a kind of story in every poem. So there is no such a distinction that he doesn't use the element of story in the poem. Like we can find that any other poet, we can say, for example, if we are taking the romantic poets, If we take Coleridge, for example, and Kubla Khan, for example, if we are taking that poem, it contains a story. So how the a poet dreams of the palace of Khan. And if we take, for example, To Autumn, which is written by uh, Keats, then we can find that it doesn't have any story with it, but it tries to praise the songs of the autumn, in what way the autumn fills the trees with fruits, in what way the song of the gnat, the song of the hedge crickets, the songs that we can find in the threshing grounds. So, in that way, it doesn't have a story element, but it tries to give us the natural imagery. So, that's how, like poetry, it makes any reader to be sensitive towards the society, to listen to the environment carefully, to listen to the nature carefully, to give a kind of a voice to the forgotten kind of aspects. So in that line, we have a poem called Green Handshake in this collection, Stoned Song. So in this Green Handshake, when we read this kind of a title, we may assume anything to do with the material kind of thing. So handshake, which is much human, and the color, the hue, which is green. But this particular poem is written it tries to give a kind of voice to the banyan tree. So the tree with its branches, the tree and its leaves, its shadow in particular. So the tree, the picture of the tree, we can find that a photographic, a picture of the tree we can find in this poem, Green Handshake, which is a delightful read for anyone with its vivid kind of imagery. So that's what we can find in this poem. And there is another poem called Shanti Sharanam Gachami. So in that uh, poem, he tries to talk of the politicians or people, how the war happens because of the interest of one single individual. So war is not the collective response of the people, or war, it doesn't define the collective desire of the people. So when someone has the self interest, then that person becomes responsible for the war. That is the idea that Mr. Narsimham tries to bring in this poem, Shanti Sharanam Gachami, uh, which is there in this collection, Stoned Song. So why you get this feeling that Yuddham Sharanam Gachami? Why do you change it? Why are you changing the traditional kind of philosophical kind of ideas? Why everyone is having their own kind of self interest, with which we are not having the peace in the country. Then we can find that there is other poem as well, a handful of sand. A handful of sand is when a person, he was to cross the border of the country and he was scared, and he takes a handful of sand thinking that what kind of problems will happen to him again. So that becomes the theme of this particular poem, A Handful of Sand. We can also observe that all the titles are chosen so carefully, including the title poem, the Stoned Song, and we can say the language of the nature, and we can say that the alphabet is a river. So he compares that the river similar to a river which gives life to things. So river also is something which has secrecy, which is mysterious. We can find river becomes a kind of a poem in most of the confessional poets like Sylvia Plath, Kamla Das. We can take river is a recurring image in their poetry, but in this collection, Narsimham tries to make it as comparing the alphabet to a river, similar a river, how a river is eternal. A river is filled with the new kind of thought. So the alphabet is eternal. The alphabet is eternal and it is containing the new thoughts. So those ideas we can find that he tries to present in this poem as well. Mostly the poem has striking images. Like we can find that the imagery is also concrete. Like he also he has a poem in this collection, Stone Song, regarding poetry itself. So he says that like Lord Shiva does the tandavam, the poetic dance. We dance with our words. So the poets are compared to Shiva, and we can say that like how he uses this kind of image like poetic dance when he tries to say that all the poets uh, they happen to have the same kind of struggle when they were to write poetry. Poetry, often people think that it is what is there to write in poetry, or what is poetry? It is just few words put together on paper. So it is not like that. Poet has to struggle much to arrive at a poem. A poem is generated when the poet happens to write, rewrite, erase, and rewrite, and then only the poet can come up with a poem. And often we find that poets, they never call themselves as poets. Like it takes so much of time to call oneself as a poet. Same thing happens with music as well. A musician has to devote several years for getting the perfection what that person desires. So by listening to a singer, the listener would feel that it is fine, but the true singer will have that kind of desire that I haven't yet reached what I wanted to reach, the perfection. So the true singer, the true poet will always look for the perfection. So that's why they often become displeased of their artistic work. Something which we can find with the painters as well. Almost any individual who is in art, we can find that uh, unless they get this kind of feeling that they couldn't please themselves, then they won't be able to please anyone else. So that's why it is really tough to be an artist. The listener, the reader of the poem, the viewer of the artistic work can derive much pleasure, but the composer of this artistic pleasure has to suffer because that person is confronted with that person's conscience, which tells that there is some part of my soul which is not yet pleased. So that's why we can find that he tries to underline the struggles of the poet in this poem, which is very much found in this collection, Stone Song. And the title, we can find that it is very much simple as well, captivating as well, Stone Song. So that's why we can find that it can be read with the people who haven't read many poems, or who haven't read so much of poetry also. They can they can start their journey with the poetry with this collection, Stone Song. The previous collection as well, Crimson Lamp as well, that also is one of the prominent poetry books, we can say that. And he in that collection as well, he brings out, for example, he says paper flowers, in which he says that the paper flower is the metaphor that he uses to indicate currency. The currency note, how it doesn't have any emotion with it, how it doesn't have fragrance, or it doesn't, he views that it doesn't have a color or any significance. So in that sense, the paper flowers, the title that he uses, and he says that in what way the a person who earns a lot after struggling so much, where the room is filled with the smell of intoxication, the people coming in and around, and the paper flowers devoided of the feeling and fragrance. So that's why we can find that he tries to give the emotions that the money, or we can say that the paper flowers, how they can't really hold anything with this. So in that sense, we can uh, very well say that he has based on his reading, so he has written elsewhere as well that he had so much of spiritual connection. His biographical details as well we can take into consideration, that he had the spiritual kind of light as well. So with that spiritual kind of feeling, he writes these works where he uses the images of the complete surrender of one's soul to the divine power. Or mostly his poems are traditional. We don't find a lot of experimentalism in his poems. They are also much confessional as well, because he has a poem called the the cover page, or we can say where he says that whenever he sees a particular picture, he is reminded of his father, then the lost childhood, how he has spent his childhood. He can feel the caress of his father. Then we just find that like he goes towards the memory lane. Poetry is one of the best things that preserves the memories. Like only in poems, we can find that the poets try to restore anything memorable that they have seen. So that's why we can find that mostly his poems are very much related to the nature. So they are also spontaneous, mostly like the romantic poets of 18th century. We can say that like mostly his poems are related to such kind of works that we can find, like Wordsworth, how he happens to look at daffodils and he thinks that the flowers make him forget his sorrow. So we can find that the poet here in this collection, Stoned Song, tries to forget his present sorrows and tries to uh, convince the readers as well how poetry can be therapeutic, how writing can be therapeutic. Like we can find that several writers, we can say, especially from the marginalized experiences as well. For example, if we take the writings of the marginalized, like or we can say people who happen to be deprived of the equality, we can find that it is writing which has enabled them to voice their views. So we can find from Northeast, for example, we can say uh, Robin S. Owen, or we can say Temsula, or we can take Anjum Hassan, or we can take Kingfam Singh Nankingri, or we can take Neetu Das, or we can take Nabina Das. So most of these poets, writers, some of them, for example, we can just find that they have taken resistance as uh, one of the ways in which they wanted to talk of their particular distinct kind of experiences. Then we can also even take of the writers, for example, the autobiographical writings of some of the Dalit writers. We can take, for example, Om Prakash Valmiki, or we can take some of the women writers as well. If we take the writings of Bama, or if we take the writings of Urmila Pawar or Daya Pawar, or we can take the writings which happen to be filled with the idea that the reader should have a kind of knowing about my life. So we can find Kumud Parveen as well. Then we can take some of the feminist poets as well, the women poets in particular, like Sukhet Rani or Salma or Gogu Shamla. So we can just find that that turmoil happens to be presented very well. So, when the writing happens to be written by any member who belongs to the uh, community which is not having the privileges, then the writing becomes more autobiographical, confessional, or we can say the writing becomes more potential, and it is filled with the simple kind of imagery and simple kind of narrative style. So that's what we can find in this collection as well. So we can say that like he uses this kind of experience of disability in these poems, and he tries to talk of these experiences where we can find that like he happens to or he tries to give a voice to what he thinks. So we can find that like any other writing we can take. For example, when we take his novels also, we just find that he tries to uh, give the voice to the things which were not spoken. Like in Stone Song as well, he tries to talk of Cleopatra. And we can find that such kind of historical backdrop he has taken, Queen Cleopatra. And we just find that he tries to give a voice to her kind of struggles as well. So we can also identify that he writes these poems in Telugu, the regional readership we can find, but he tries to highlight his consciousness of knowing the history. So that's what we can find in all these poems. Like we have the language of nature, the first poem, and love tunes, where he tries to use the word that the moon sings, the song of the moonlight. So the everything he tries to view it as a song. Also, he writes in this collection, Stone Song, that there is no other music more cheerful, more uh, soothing than the language of silence. Then we can also find, because he belongs to the Telugu speaking region, and he says unified verse chain. That is the title he uses to speak about the various because the language Telugu itself is very much rich, and we very well we know that in what way it has its own kind of uniqueness. And not only because of its vowel ending words, but because of the verb as well. And we can find that like how the verb gets conjugated in Telugu, and we just find that it has its own kind of uniqueness when Telugu happens to be the, especially the verbs happens to how they when they get conjugated. And so that's why he writes that how Telugu can be seen as one of the uh, sweetest. Then we can just say that like he says Telugu means the warmth of love, and it is the devotion of poet Potana. It is the philosophy of poet Vemana and Potana Vemana. We can find that like they can be respected very well, not only by the Telugu speaking people, but by the others as well. Because what kind of philosophy that Vemana brings, especially when we teach these kind of poems for the children, we can find that like it is a rich heritage that we have in our language. Sadly, these days we find that many Telugu poems, even the names of the kavyas are not being taught that much. We don't say that they are completely So that is how, like, we can find there is a poem which is about the process of poetry. There is a poem which is about the language Telugu. So in this way, we can find how the poetry collection can be treated as something which is like which can please all the readers, like the readers who are elderly, the readers who are children, or anyone can read, because the language happens to be very much simpler. Then we can find that he writes flags of friendship, where he tries to speak of the friendship between people. Like the friendship, it doesn't have the age or gender or anything as a hindrance to it. He says the alphabet had horse ride in the past. Later letters of palanquin, which would indicate the letters of love. And he compares writing a letter is similar to the devoted child uh, touching the feet of the mother for blessing. So that is tender experiences we can find. Writing a letter is really a tender experience. And we can find that he compares writing letter to a devoted child waiting for the mother to bless. Then he compares reading letters is similar to standing near the ocean and catching the seashells. So again, many tender experiences he uses and tries to indicate them. So it is like catching the seashore is similar to reading letters. So reading letters is similar to catching the seashells near the seashore, which is also again a tender kind of nostalgic experience. Then there is other poem called Flags of the Nation, where he tries to say like how the people who work in the armed forces, so how they sacrifice themselves, how they happen to endure everything, because they can never sleep, and often they have to stay near the cold mountains. They have the fire in their hearts, and they are so alert, vigilant. Sometimes they get defeated, but we can find that they happen to win the love of everyone. We can find that he compares the soldiers as the selfless lambs who would burn for the sake of the others. To identify how he has so much of observation. So everyday life, he has this kind of a poem in this collection, where he says that a boy uh, he just uh, gets himself indulged in selling toys near the footpath, and there is a man who sells newspapers. We can find a fruit seller, the woman who sells fruits, and she is pleased to have few coins. So we can find that like they were to do so many things, and the little things that they receive from people, they delight them. So mostly we can find all these poems happen to speak of the oppression, the experience of the marginalized people. So poverty becomes or we can find that it is very much present. So that's why we can say that like he is a poet who is very much conscious of the uh, that he sees every time. So we all look at things whenever we go out. We happen to look at the fruit sellers, the vegetable vendors, but he sees what the others won't see. That is how they happen to be happier with the smaller delights. Then we can also find that like how he happens to speak of the peace, the war. Then we can also find like there is this other poem called Measurement of Life. where we can just find he says the smell of the rain copies the smell of the rice being cooked. Again, we can find he compares two tender kind of experiences with one another. So we can find the smell of the rain when it drenches the earth, and the smell of the rice when it is cooked. We can just find that like how these two things are so tender and how they can be compared. The little hunger makes a thunderstorm when the rice is being cooked in the little pot. In the moony plate, the moonlight is the silver rice. So the color of the rice, like how he uses to indicate the silver, which would also indicate the age as well. Then we can also find, he says, because of the mother's toil, the father's digging in the land, then we can just find the rice, it reaches the rice pot. Then we can find when the teacher writes the pearl white kind of alphabet on the black board, and the black board we can compare it to the black cloud. Can find the letters can be compared to the rice, the grains of the rice. Then we can find if the older woman, if she toils, or younger men, if they toil, they all happen to be working for the rice, which would actually indicate that for some kind of living we all struggle. So turning like crimson blood. So we just find that like how they happen to uh, give, they were to exert themselves so much, then they can get the grain of rice. Then he in the beginning of this poem, in the first part of this poem, he happens to speak of the good toiling kind of people who all the time work, all 24 hours they work to work because they need the food. Then for this kind of food, these many scams happen. So in the second part of the poem, he happens to talk of the people who do evil practices for me. Then he also says, even one becomes a teacher, reads many scriptures. So ultimately, the philosophy is only the thing which is like the hunger which should be satisfied. So, in that way, we can find that to be written, where we can find that like he tries to give us the glimpse of this book, and I very much recommend this kind of book to everyone. Whenever they are interested, they can read this stoned song, which is written by Mopur Penchal Narsimham. I have translated it, and he has dedicated this book to his father. It has a good cover page as well. We can find, we can very well decode the aesthetic appeal of the cover page as well. I recommend this book, and if and I thank the organizers for giving this opportunity for me so that I can express my views on this book.